Hey, what's up everyone? Tedrick85 here, and today I'm going to be talking about Predator for the NES. Everybody and their mother has reviewed this game, and almost every single one of them has dragged this game through the mud. So I decided to try this game out for myself, which I was able to find a copy for around $3. Since I'm a glass half full kind of guy, I'm going to approach this game a different way. I'm going to discuss what some of the good points are, or things that I like about the game, and I'm also going to talk about what's bad about this game, or where it falls short of quality. First, the good points. For the most part, this game follows the central plot of the movie, though how anyone could mess up the story of Predator is beyond me. The graphics in the intro look decent too. They could be better, but you can definitely tell what you're looking at just by seeing the pictures. Early on, it looks like the game tries to capture the atmosphere and environment of the film, at least in the first level anyways. You can tell Ernie is in the jungle, though one could argue it looks more like a forest since the trees don't look all that tropical. It also includes scorpions like the one in the movie, though here they appear as the size of a small dog. Come to think of it, they look like the scorpions on Pitfall. You even have to fight some Valverde soldiers, much like Dutch and his crew did early in the film. I gotta be honest, I don't think the music in this game is that bad. In some levels, it's actually pretty decent. Here's a sample of the music from the game's first few levels. If you really enjoy the music, you can always pause the game and it continues to play. I know a lot of game reviewers complain about music playing when the game is paused, but I personally have no problem with it. Depending on the music itself, it can be a nice way to compose yourself by simply enjoying yourself if you find yourself getting frustrated at the game at a particular point. The game also includes an arsenal of weapons, which is actually both good and bad. While the fist is an okay melee attack, the machine gun is a pretty good ranged weapon, which can be actually overlooked in the very first level where it sits high in the tree at the start. Why it's there, I don't know. Maybe it was Harper's. The best shooting weapon you can get is the laser, which not only dispatches enemies but also lets you shoot your way through some obstructions. The only thing is, last time I remember, the only person who shot a laser in the movie was the Predator. Oh well. It does add some variety to what Dutch can use in the game. There are also grenades, which other than to blow up stuff is relatively useless in the game. Try your best not to get this unless you absolutely need to in order to clear a way to the end of the level. Now let's get to the bad points. I'm not going to discuss how ridiculous Ernie looks in pink, since pretty much every other reviewer has commented on this. The only thing I have to say is, maybe this was an attempt to attract female gamers to play this. Though I'd think that after playing this game for about 10 minutes, they'd take the game out of the console and bash their hubbies or boyfriends over the head with it. Other than the Valverde soldiers and the Predator itself, all the other enemies in this game look really odd. Some of the enemies you'll find in this game include floating bacteria, amoeba-type things, floating things that look like a cross between a Metroid and a Portuguese man-o'-war, seahorse-type things that look like the space jockey in Alien, and some weird, bouncy, gumdrop-looking critters. I can't even begin to tell you what these things are supposed to be. Maybe they're aliens, but I'm not going to even begin to classify these things. Trying to classify these enemies is kinda like trying to classify dust bunnies under an old piece of furniture. It's just pointless. Speaking of the enemies, the AI leaves something to be desired. The enemies don't seem to have any real pattern or anything that suggests they react to Dutch as he goes through the level. I do have to admit it is rather comical seeing him fall into the bottomless pit. I don't know, maybe even they were tired of being in this game after a while. Not only are the enemies less than intelligent, but they respawn as well, which can be a real pain in the neck if you need to backtrack for some reason in case you have to go somewhere you shouldn't. The only thing worse than respawning enemies are stupid respawning enemies, and believe me, this game is full of them. Besides all of these flaws, there are two big things that sink this game as a whole. The first is the game's controls. It can take some time getting used to exactly how Dutch moves, because he is faster than what you'd think he'd be. Another thing about the controls is that the game is inconsistent when it comes to ducking. What I mean by that is that you can duck and shoot your machine gun or laser at the same time, but you can't duck and punch at the same time. This can spell doom for you if you find yourself bombarded with smaller enemies and you have no weapons. Maybe the game developers did this to make the game harder, but if they were going to do that, why not have it where you can't duck when performing any kind of attack instead of just when you use your fists? Jumping can be a chore too, because it is so awkward when it comes down to it, especially if you're trying to jump onto smaller platforms. Make one mistake and you can bet that there's a bottomless pit nearby. The second thing that sinks this game is the gameplay. All you do is get from one end of the level to the other, and there's little variety in level design other than maybe some color swaps and alternating between a jungle setting and a rather weird alien setting. You pretty much have the same objective in each level, and no, I'm not going to count Big Mode. Not only does this look like a whole other video game, but it accomplishes absolutely nothing in terms of gameplay. You encounter Big Mode after every few levels in the game, where you shoot random stuff and kill a predator at the end and then go back to playing a normal level. I think they could have done something different, like maybe give certain levels different objectives, where it doesn't feel you're doing the same thing over and over again. I almost forgot. A cool thing about this game is that you have infinite continues. Well, sort of. What I mean is that you must be at least on level 5 in order to be able to use the continue feature. How stupid is this? Shouldn't you be able to continue on whatever level you're on no matter how early it is in the game? Oh, and make sure you have the cursor on continue by pressing select on the title screen before you push start, because the game puts the cursor on start by default. You get 4 lives, which when you start playing this you'll probably go through them really quickly. Oh, and when you die, you explode! Why Ernie explodes after he dies, I have no clue. Last time I checked, the Predator exploded into bits at the end of the movie, not Dutch Schaefer. Why couldn't they have done like they did in the MSX version of this game where it shows Dutch lying face down when he's dead? And what would a Predator review be without talking about the actual Predator? Not only do you see him at the end of each Big Mode, but he acts as a mini-boss after every so many levels. Considering there are 30 levels in the game, not counting the Big Mode levels, that's quite a handful of encounters with a chameleonic alien. I'm not kidding. You'll have to see this thing no fewer than 6 times. Not only is the frequency in which you see him weird, but the Predator itself looks kinda scrawny compared to Dutch. I know Arnold Schwarzenegger is a big dude, but the Predator was pretty imposing physically as well. I kinda wish they would have had with the Predator like they did with the MSX version, and have him invisible to start out with and then becoming more visible the more you hit him. Defeating the Predator is very easy. Simply shoot lasers at him until he eventually goes down. Make sure you have the lasers though, because if you try to shoot him with a machine gun, he will not take any damage. Not only does he serve as a mini-boss in Jungle Mode and in Big Mode, he's also the final boss of the game as well. Well, kinda. What I mean is, once you get to the end of stage 30, you encounter a giant predator head. I have no problem with floating heads as bosses as long as they're utilized correctly, but here it just seems really goofy. Why couldn't they have just gotten a predator mini-boss and give him more hit points, or maybe make him a bit bigger and stronger with more attacks? What's really annoying about this final boss is that it seems like it takes about a gajillion shots from your laser gun in order to defeat this guy. The boss comes in 2 phases, masked and unmasked. Both have the same movements and attacks, but I think the unmasked version takes longer to defeat. The hit detection here isn't great either, as you'll notice if you get here that sometimes it looks like you have a clean hit on it, but it doesn't register. Once you defeat the giant predator head, you are treated to the game's ending, which is actually very good considering this is an NES game made back in 1989. The graphics here are as good as they were in the game's intro, and it also sticks closely to the ending of the movie. Overall, this game could have been much better if they could have fixed some of the basics, such as made the controls better, or had a little more variety in terms of gameplay, and they could have done a better job being faithful to the movie. I think that this game had the potential to be good, but in the end it just feels like a missed opportunity that would leave any Predator fan underwhelmed. If I didn't know any better, I would have never guessed that this game was made by Activision, the company that made many classic Atari games, as well as the Guitar Hero franchise and the Skylanders series. It could have been worse, though. It could have been made by either Ocean, Mindscape, or LJN. So did I end up throwing $3 down the toilet? Not necessarily. Have you ever watched a movie so bad you found it somewhat enjoyable? That's kinda how I feel about this game. It's definitely not a good game. I know it's not good, you know it's not good, and my dog knows it's not good. However, it was a distraction that provided me a different kind of gaming experience, even if it wasn't all that good. And in a weird kind of way, I sorta like this game. This is Tedrick85 speaking. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.